in the shadow of a famous parent. However, if the parent was a historical icon who was slain before you understood why they were famous, the road ahead can be twice as hard. So the Round Table now welcomes a woman who has faced these challenges and more, Ms. Shabazz, the eldest daughter of the legendary Malcom X. Ms. Shabazz, thanks for coming, and again,
my pleasure.
Welcome. Tell me something. As much as you can, share with the audience. What kind of a person was your father?
As a person, the human being, was very accessible, my first buddy. And being firstborn, I am blessed just by birth order to have had a relationship with him that I wish my sisters had had the opportunity to have. And it just sort of confirmed my nature as a person now, so that the public doesn't define it, and peer pressure didn't define it, that my father was very accessible, funny, supportive, and very engaging. So I had a very, he was my boon-coon, to put it mildly.
You said funny. And, you know,
Yeah.
people remember Malcolm being a very serious...
Well, those are the excerpts that they gave you. But if you were to ever listen to my father's speeches from the beginning to the end, they were anecdotal, they were referral, they were vignettes of various aspects of life, and he was quite humorous all the while. What it was committed, so that they would give you the furrowed brow in the excerpt that has been perpetuated. And every now and then when someone portrays my father and they do that kind of grimace, you want to say, wrong face.
As the oldest daughter, is it your intention to try to continue the legacy of your father, or?
You know, I think all children and people who are inspired or in the presence of, we wind up being legacies of everything around us. If it is what someone else on the outside discerns, I can't measure or determine what that is, because they're misinterpreting something and I can't fulfill that. But I would call myself a natural Shabazz.
A natural Shabazz. It's got to be frustrating for you with the misrepresentations and the misgivings that just abound throughout because he was so famous. How do you cope with that? Is there some way that you can, somebody you find or some group that you find to kind of lean on?
What makes my circumstance different is simply that those who have assessments are larger, you know, but everyone goes through them in their lives. I would gather that your children go through them, you know. Everyone, whether you're the minister's daughter or the principal's child, that we all have people that have expectations of us.
What about Dr. Betty Shabazz, who was a brilliant woman? I had the pleasure to know her, but a lot of people just don't know about her.
Do they not?
No, I mean, a lot of people, of course...
Maybe not in California, but you couldn't miss her in the East, because she was part of everything, you know, in the East Coast, and has a personality. I mean, when one says her name, it's almost associated to an adjective. You know, the nature, the being, the presence. Uh-oh, here comes Dr. Shabazz. You know, that kind of thing. As a professor, as a teacher, as a maternal mentor, she never stopped. But what people don't realize is that with all of that strength was the vulnerability of having been left here without her husband. My mother was a perpetual wife, even when my father was killed, so she never lived the life of a widow. It was as if he was still here. So her commitment to him when she said, "I do," was with her until she made her transition.
A brilliant woman. Your family, I mean, you're of course, the eldest of five?
Six.
Six, right? Six. And did you have to assume some of that motherly
It's not even a have to, it's an is.
It is.
It's just an is. If you're born first and you're mommy's little girl, and they know how psychologically to lure you in, come here, mommy's little girl. You know, she called me Miss Shabazz from that point on. So I remind my sisters who don't like to hear it that I changed each one of their diapers, and they didn't have Pampers then. You know, so it was difficult. So when I'm speaking to them with love, having had an investment very early.
Right.
But no, there's no burden for me to be the elder sister. I am glad I am my sister's elder sister, and taking into consideration now that we are without parents. You know, the image of Malcolm and or Betty is still alive to others because of the way they had them. So clearly, it's my place and my honor to be the eldest daughter to my parents' children.
Sure.
And my dedication is because of the way they were as parents.
When you go and you around the country and around the world to talk to, are they young audiences?
It varies. People.
It varies.
I like people.
You've been doing it for a while, so how's your message received?
Oh gosh, Mr. Hooks.
I'm sure.
I'm often asked back. So when you say how is it received, I never know. I have to always say a prayer. I don't have a plan or a curriculum when I go.
You just speak from the heart.
Speak from the heart, but at least I start with the heart, and I think that's what it is. I mean, sometimes there's a platform and agenda, but mine is from inside out. And I know what my grandparents were doing. I know what my parents were doing. I am a product of having been fed that from Gerber stages. And whether it's young people, we talk about disenfranchised youngsters, and then we ignore the children who are in private schools and everything like that.
Right.
We put them on the back burner. Youngsters all need reinforcement.
Sure.
So my thing is, how do they become part of the same posse so that they can share those resources and balances and stories, so that every 16-year-old knows what it feels like to be 16, so that any child without a child, whether you are from an urban atmosphere or neighborhood and you only have one mother in the household, is that different than the child who has a father who was killed, or the one who experiences divorce? Let's have all of those children talk about what that is, so that's a simple analogy, but more of us have things in common than we realize. And it's to just have the round table, so to speak, so that those things can be heard.
So basically you tour and you lecture, for the most part, all the time.
All the time, a lot.
Now, I wanted to just touch on the organizations, the Heritage Foundation, well, not Heritage Foundation, but is it the Heritage Foundation?
Which?
Well, you have two organizations that I've heard of, and it's the Pilgrimage Foundation.
The Pilgrimage Foundation, Legacy Incorporated, the Malcom X, Shabazz Birth Site and Foundation are all various organizations, some nonprofit, some for-profit, still having to do with the same thing, moving resources. So if I have Legacy Incorporated, it is also incorporated as Everybody Has One.
Okay. So your organization. Oh, what about the site? You mentioned to me the site, the Malcom X Memorial Site, that you were going to be building.
My father was born in Omaha, Nebraska.
In Nebraska.
And so as a result, we established the Malcom X Shabazz Birth Site and Foundation. And existing in Omaha right now is the Malcom X Memorial Foundation. But as a family member, my mother and I both felt some 15, 16 years ago, we wanted to take the word memorial out. Because when it's you yourself, you want to remove that side and celebrate the life. And we have about 20 acres in Omaha, Nebraska, in which we'd like to develop a kind of world compound, so that you're walking the footsteps of my father, so that there's the humanities building and the building of education.
Right.
And in each one of those houses, we can archive my father's footsteps. So theology, all of those things. But to incorporate, make it available, my father has to be available to everybody.
Sure.
So sometimes I know that certain parts of our culture want to hold him as their own or our own. But in order to really celebrate people who have gone before us, you have to make sure that the door is open for all of us to have access to him.
I saw you, to kind of digress for a second, I saw you in a play a few years back, and you blew me away, because I didn't know you were such a wonderful actress as well, as being this incredible person. What are your thoughts about acting?
Stepping Into Tomorrow was the play that you saw.
Right.
Yolanda King and I, back in 1979, initiated the company Nucleus,
Right.
the Center of Positive Energy. And not much different than the missions of the organizations we talked about just recently. But Nucleus then used the platform, instead of doing lecture circuits to youth, we created a piece. And because I had to, as its founder and one of its creative directors, and to keep the budgets down, I got on stage. So it was not my intent, because even while on stage, I'm directing. You know, so there's too many hats to wear. The difference, what enabled me to do it, is because I believed in the script, I believed in the words, I believed in the message.
Right.
So for me, it really is from the heart out, but it enabled me not to do it as myself, but in the character.
Talk to us about Alex Haley. You were very close to Alex. You worked with him.
Alex Haley's my godfather, so close is not just close.
Okay. All right.
That's my godfather.
I know you did a lot of things with him.
Yeah.
Until he passed on. How was the experience of dealing with
Well, you have to know, as my godfather, you know, so I knew him long before there was any roots. You know, and he also is the collaborative writer on the autobiography of Malcom X.
And I know that you did a lot of work with him. He was your godfather, and as a matter of fact, I spent some time with Alex, and with you and Alex, and I just wondered, like, overall in your life, what kind of impression did he have on you?
The significance of Alex Haley in my life started long before any success of Alex Haley in my life. And that's what I mean. The value of my father and mother having certain people around them despite the crises and the challenges of the time. When Alex Haley started writing the autobiography with my father, they became closer and closer, so I was not anointed as goddaughter until that relationship had started. So it was maybe 7, 8 years old when that relation began. But what was really significant was watching two men bond as brothers. And for me to be named, or my father to select this man for his child, also has its own association of devotion and love. So when my father was killed, Alex Haley happened to be one of those paternal persons, based on having loved my father, that I got to have until he left, and a buddy, you know, a real friend.
You guys were tight.
A real buddy.
Yeah.
And to know the vulnerability of black men standing tall and going through different means of presenting their art, their voice. There were no real supported writers at the time. There was no guaranteed success for a writer at the time, much less a subject that my godfather ventured on, such as roots. No one really wanted to hear it. But my father had said to him, you have to do it. And kind of gave that kind of stamp. And when my father transitioned, it was one of the many conversations we had that Malcolm's there supporting it, because at least that's someone who got it and understood it. What people really don't understand is that the Malcom X movie was not just a 1992 picture, but Marvin Worth, who was a Hollywood producer.
And another very good friend of yours.
Paternal. These are all the paternal people I inherited, because Marvin Worth and my father knew each other at 17 years old.
Wow.
Before my father went to jail and Marvin Worth moved on to writing vaudeville. But they came to my mother and Alex Haley and got the rights to start the process of doing the movie. James Baldwin was the original screenwriter or manuscript writer, adapter, and Arnold Pearl came on board to adapt it to screen. And so that the relationship moved around in many ways, as confidant, as partners, as you know, when he and my mother in their sibling relationship couldn't communicate as, you know, fluidly as they needed to, I'd get in, you know, because my mother would always remind you, that's my husband. So you may be associated to the subject, but that's my husband. So I was blessed. My parents gave me quite a number of people.
You still bi-coastal?
Yes.
So you have a place in New York, you have a
Yes.
place in Los
Right.
Angeles, and then you're all over the world. You want to talk about your family? No, you want to talk about your kid and
My kids, plural.
your kids, plural.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about things that you don't necessarily want to touch on, but I know how dedicated you are to your daughter and to.
I am definitely a mom. It's as simple as that. So there are a lot of people that don't know I have children, much less grandchildren, but I am in the bosom a mom. I'm a mom as a big sister. I'm a mom as a grandmother. I'm very much a mother, and a mom to other people's children. I like it. I like kids.
You do it well.
Yeah, I like kids.
You do it
and,
well, even to my kids.
Well, I like I was really, really fortunate to be a laptop child around a lot of elders, and really appreciated the accessibility they allowed me to have to them. And I think you have to make yourself available and listen and be open and kind of identify the spark in them that might seem to be off-center or make them beat to an odd drum, which I certainly did, and just value people.
Mm-hmm. You didn't say you were a grandmother, did you?
Well, you know I'm a grandmother.
Do I? Yes, I do. I do. And no, my son. We had recently had dinner together, the three of us, you, my son, and I. And I tell you, talking about being a mom, he could not stop talking about you. And you all had a very spiritual conversation together, and he was really moved by that. So not only are you a mom to all those other people, but to my kid, my youngest son, Robert.
Well,
Jr.
he has what it takes, and if it's not like somebody else's, you have to really sanction one where they stand. And he walks with a value.
You are writing. I want to talk to you a little bit about the books that you are authoring and have authored. Are you writing something now, and what have you written so the audience will know?
Well, I had the pleasure of writing the new foreword to my father's autobiography, and that was actually bequeathed to me through my godfather, Alex Haley.
Through Alex?
In 1990, they approached him to update the foreword to the book. We're in a different time. It's not 1965. The movie was about to come out, and he then said, I would rather his daughter, who's also a writer, write it because she'll give a different perspective from a younger perspective, and certainly from a direct perspective, being my father's child. So I had the opportunity to write that right around when the stamp came out.
Oh, the stamp.
It was my honor to have my godfather bequeath it and to actually be part of the annals that will be associated to my father.
The stamp is now out of print.
It's out of circulation.
Okay.
But you can call the philatelic associations or services, and they still have them. You can actually order any stamp.
Great stamp.
Thank you.
That stamp, of course, I have my own souvenir that I keep, and I bought, and I use them all the time because they look so good on my gray stationery. Well, I think I've held you long enough here at the round table.
It was my pleasure.
Well, I got to tell you that we're going to be doing a lot of things here in Inglewood, and I don't think any of them will be able to top having you on the round table to talk about you, your life with your parents, your siblings, and all those wonderful things. So I want to just personally thank you very, very much for joining us at the round table, Ms. Shabazz.
Thank you, Mr. Hux.
My pleasure.